This is Progress Canada, presented by Lightbulb Narrative. Today we're joined by Rob Ashton, National President of the International Longshore Workers Union of Canada and Federal NDP Leadership Candidate. Thanks for joining me, Rob.
Thanks, Teresa. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I've been really interested in your campaign for NDP Leader because I'm not a long-term NDP member. I have voted NDP at the federal level before, so I'm interested in general. But in particular, your candidacy is interesting to me because it doesn't seem like any candidacy I've seen in the past. So I went and did some research, as I often do. And I was looking at your background. In terms of age, most NDP leaders have entered politics by the time they're 40. It seems to be something that they're interested from the get-go, and it's part of their professional background for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
The exception being Audrey McLaughlin. Then the other side of it is most NDP leaders are also from a professional background. They're lawyers, professors, whatever you have. But the one exception, of course, is Alexa McDonough, who was not in that background. You're also not of that background. So you're a first-time politician. You've got 30 years as a longshoreman. Your background really does set you apart. How do you think that's going to help you with voters?
I think it's going to help a lot, because nobody else understands, or very few people at any rate, understand what it's like to clock in and clock out every day. They don't understand the struggles that working families go through every single day. Every people across Canada that are working full-time jobs are struggling every single day to put food on the table. And this has been going on for the last 3 years. And what people see is politicians in Ottawa that aren't connecting and seeing the struggles that they're going through. And I've seen it. My members have lived it. Other union members have lived it, that we worked with, that we walked the picket lines with, that we stand shoulder to shoulder with during their struggles. You just look at in communities across Canada with the lines at the food banks getting longer and longer. And these are people with full-time jobs, a lot of them. Some of them working 2 jobs, and they can't even make ends meet. So you get a person like me that decides to jump in the race and fight for the working class in this country. Nobody really knows what to expect, because I've known it, I feel it, I love it. I love fighting for the working class. And you compare me with, I talk a lot, so if I go on too long, Teresa, just
no, that's the whole point.
But if you compare me to Mark Carney or Pierre Poilievre, who has done nothing but been a politician his entire adult life, Poilievre, that's all he knows, is how to be a politician. He's well-groomed, knows what to say every second of the day. Well, for the most part, anyways, except when he says that electricians steal lightning from the gods in their hands. And then you got Carney, and he's a banker, right? So he knows how to deal with bankers. He knows how to deal with corporate boardrooms, which is all fine and dandy, but he doesn't even know, he's not in touch with what happens with working Canadians. He doesn't know the struggles that we go through, and you got to look at Dave Barrett from the BC NDP. He came from social worker class, working class, and look at the good things he did in that province. Nicole Turmel, she was the first female president of PSAC, then became a politician, or not your regular everyday politician, because politicians that come from the working class aren't the same as your everyday politician. We're different. We're built different because we've lived the struggle. And she led the party. Right? So we bring a different feeling to politics because we know what it's like.
There seems to be this gap in the political class of understanding what it is like to be on the shop floor, to be working out of a store, to be clocking in and out. You mentioned clocking in and out. I just had flashbacks to being docked for every 15 minutes that you were in or out and closing up and not getting paid for that and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of people in politics who just do not have an understanding of that. And then there's a lot of people in politics who do have an understanding of that, but then they go into politics and sort of seem to forget that background. So what really inspired you to enter into politics at this point? Was it a frustration with people just lacking that understanding?
I was angry. I was angry at a whole raft of things. I was angry that the Liberals would politic left and then they would rule right on behalf of their corporate masters. I was really angry that Poilievre could sell himself as a worker. I was angry at the party I want to lead because we drifted away from our roots. We drifted away from the working class values that we grew up on. It was almost like we were drifting center. We wanted to be like the other two groups, right? But we're not like the other two groups. And it was out of a sense of frustration that there is nobody out there that's willing to speak for the working class. Like when I did the French debate, or the attempted French debate, I love self-deprecating humor, so like
I think that's fair. I did watch it, and I agree.
Yeah, like I wore my work boots with my suit, right? Because that grounds me. That's who I am, right? And if you ever get to a point in politics where you feel yourself drifting away from who you are and becoming something different, then that's time for you to get out. Right? And I've told all my friends, I've told my friends and colleagues that are working with me on this campaign, all the vast amount of volunteers, said, if I ever start to become the person that you don't want me to become, tell me so I can check myself, or I can check myself out the door, because I don't belong here then. Like, you have to represent the people that you're representing, and I represent the working class.
So I want to talk about that a little bit, because I think the term working class is open to interpretation, because I think different people think different things about it, which is, true of most terminology in politics. People don't always come at things with the same frame of mind. When you're talking about the working class, though, it's a pretty inclusive label, and it's not about labor specifically as people's position in the economy. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I find it really interesting, like how broad it is from your perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And I appreciate it, because I do read Reddit once in a while. I do have a Reddit account, and I will not give out my handle. So to me, working class means anybody that doesn't own the means of production, unless it's workers that own the means of production. Okay, because then the working class are owning that means of production. It means a nurse that has to work like obscene amounts of overtime to make ends meet, or has to work a second job just to make ends meet. It's the small business owner that's getting squeezed out by big corporations like Amazon or Walmart or Temu, or pick one of them. It's young people that can't move out of the house. It's laid off workers that can't find a job, the 1.5 million of them in this country, or whatever it is now. It's people that want to work but can't find a good job that can support them, or maybe their family as well, or they can't find a job at all, or if they do, it's for $17 an hour and they can't make ends meet, because nobody can live off that nowadays. It's people with disabilities, because the liberal governments and the conservative governments that we go back and forth just about every election, they don't care. They have no heart. It's people that can't work for whatever reason. They can't work. It's Indigenous workers. It's migrant workers. If you're worried about how you're going to cover the costs of your daily lives, your rent, your grocery, your kids' future, how do you save for your kids' college or university education when you can't even make your daily ends meet? That's the people. That's the working class to me. And together, like all of us together, we're the majority in this country, and we should control the country. We should be saying enough is enough. We're the working class. We create this country. We built this country. We run the country. And the NDP has got to be squarely on the shoulders of the working class. We need to be on the side of everyone who's being told the economy is working great while they're working harder than ever, but they're falling behind every single day. That's the working class to me, and those are the people that the NDP has to represent.
I want to touch on something that you brought up, which is people with disabilities. So we just had the Day of Recognition for that last week.
Mhm.
And I noted, as somebody who cares about these issues, that the Prime Minister did not even make a statement about it, which to me is appalling. But your statement was actually excellent. So in addition to putting out a statement for these various days of recognition, you just did one for violence against women as well. You also put some policy behind it. And for people with disabilities, you're asking for a few different things, but I think the biggest one of note is increasing the subsidy from $200 to $1,000. And when I saw that number, I just thought, like, that is make or break for somebody. Like, that makes the difference about whether you're going to the food bank, about whether you're losing your housing, about whether you can get your medical appointments with transit or transportation of some kind. That makes an enormous difference. And I think that's what the disability community has been calling for, because $200, as you know, is incredibly measly. Why do you think that is such an important gap to fill?
I was talking to a young person my last trip to Montreal, and they were telling me how hard it was to get on disability insurance, even though you can't hold a full-time job or even a part-time job because of your disability. And then you factor that into the government's measly $200 a month that they may even claw back if you're on some other type of insurance program. It's horrific. It's horrendous. You see, the government's responsibility to the Canadian people is to lift them up, to give them an ability to live with dignity. But they don't do that. They are there to protect corporate wealth. That's it. And that's obscene. Every member of the working class has a right to live. Every member of the working class has a right not to be afraid of what tomorrow's going to look like. And under these two groups, the Liberals and the Conservatives, and you're on disability payments, that's what your life is like. I'm guessing, right? This is just from what people tell me and from what I hear and from what I see. It's shameful that the Canadian government won't help somebody that wants to help themselves, but they can't. And so it has to change.
I want to talk about economic inequality, because we were just talking about that in terms of people with disabilities, but it's also broader than that now. There's enormous stratification in our society now. I think at this point we're in a neo-gilded age, quite frankly, in the world, where we just increasingly pad wealth for the already wealthy and everybody else is left struggling. So, according to Stats the middle class tops out at $89,000 in Canada. Now, despite that fact, there are still millionaires in this country and in the US and around the world who call themselves middle class despite having millions. And many of those millionaires, and there was polling done on this, they still feel like they are struggling. And this is something that I experienced in government when we were doing free tuition grants for low-income people. Middle-income people thought, well, that's not for me, even though they could apply for it. And then much richer people thought, well, I'm getting scammed now because I'm paying up for other people and I'm struggling, yada, yada, yada. There doesn't seem to be a class that doesn't think they're struggling, which is wild to me. But given that's the case, how do we build a country where we can get buy-in for people to pay and receive their fair share as opposed to what we have right now?
That's a heck of a question. In politics is all about your priorities in life. And for far too long, and like when the Liberals are in power for a couple of terms, the Conservatives go, we need change, vote for us, and they get in, and it's the same old, same old, same old. And with those two parties going back and forth, their priority has always been about protecting wealth. not rewarding work. So right now, if you look at our tax system, it makes it easier to get it for the rich to get richer, but it makes it harder for the working class folks to get by. And that's a huge problem. You know, well, what working class Canadians were asking for the federal government to remove, like, remove the luxury tax on yachts and private jets.
That one specifically irritates me.
I don't even have one friend that probably thought about doing that. And those are the kinds of priorities that a liberal government and a conservative government are going to do, especially this liberal government. So, like with my plan that we're putting out, it starts with changing our priorities. You know, for example, a wealth tax. No one should be worth $1 billion in this country or the world, never mind $1 trillion. And then we're starting to have a few of those. The people making the most should be paying their fair share, as I think is a lot of people, if not everybody, should agree with that. But what happens when they do that is they take the burden off of the rest of us that are struggle through our day-to-day lives. Tax loopholes, they got to be shut down completely. So we're going to be ending tax breaks for corporate landlords who renovate families. And I'm not saying every landlord is bad. Like, I used to be a landlord many years ago. We used to charge very reasonable rent for people to live there, right? And there's a lot of landlords out there, but those corporate landlords who will kick a family out just so that they can redo the place and charge somebody else more rent, we got to fix that. We got to stop letting profitable corporations pay nothing while small businesses end up closing their doors. I remember walking up and down in like Prince Rupert, BC. There were small shops everywhere, but there's closed doors now up there. We got to make sure that people that make millions of dollars actually contribute where they should be contributing. You know, we're going to stop giving out corporate free rides because that's killing us too. You know, every public dollar that we send to a company to help them be lifted up, there is going to be a guarantee from them that they're going to keep the jobs and the company in Canada for long term. And they can't just pack up and run away. You know, there's going to be no more blank checks to businesses who take public money only to turn around and lay people off. Like, look at Algoma. $500 million. Then they go around, lay off 1,000 people. That's ridiculous. Right? Or these telecommunication companies, they farm the work south of the border to a right to work state, or they ship it overseas, or they treat their workers, just trying not to drop a swear word in there.
No, go for it. We totally endorse that here.
Or they treat their workers horribly. This all is going to end because it's about priorities. When you get into politics and you form government, it's about your priorities. And so when they're finally paying their fair share, we'll invest in what actually matters, what people actually need. Public homes, good jobs, strengthening our healthcare system that right-wing governments purposely destroy and cut back so they can say, oh, hey, look, our healthcare system doesn't work. We better do a two-tiered system, which does nothing but benefit the wealthy. This is the type of stuff. These are the priorities that we have to choose for the working class of this country.
So I want to talk now about, I'm no stranger to party politics and what that can bring out in people. And usually leadership races bring out some cultural debates in the party. So there was some polling done by Polara Insights, Strategic Insights back in October. And one of the questions they focused on with NDP voters was whether the party should be leaning towards practical, affordable solutions or bold, progressive change. Now, I have my own opinion about this as a person voting in this country, but does the NDP need to actually make a choice between that, or can it actually offer affordability and progress at the same time, in your opinion?
Yeah, no, that's telling us we have to make a choice is a bunch of hooey, right? Like it really is. The bold progressive change that we're pushing for, that is practical and necessary to make life more affordable. Governments keep telling us that bold progressive change is impossible. They say it's just how the economy works. Oh, and by the way, if we make all this bold progressive change, we can't afford it. You could bankrupt the country. For that, I say get stuffed. Because what hasn't changed? Every budget that comes through for the last 100+ years, the rich get richer. Right now, they're getting richer way faster and way richer than they have been in years gone by. CEOs are making record profits, corporate profits they're pouring in. But when we demand better for the working class, they say, oh, we can't afford it. That'll break us. This system that we're running right now, it's busted. And the same old ideas that keep getting dumped in or rewritten, but it's the exact same thing behind all the fancy words. That's what's breaking us. And it's not going to fix what we do. It's not going to fix the country. The governments have given everything the corporate class has asked for. Tax breaks, subsidies, deregulation. What has the working class got? That's what we got. Right? So here's what I believe, right? Bold change is practical. It's the most direct way to get us where we need to be. For me, that means like we're gonna a jobs guarantee, which promises a job for everybody. Everyone who wants to get a job building homes, fixing infrastructure, caring for people. We're going to be tripling public, co-op, and nonprofit housing, so homes stay affordable for people instead of being bought up by corporate landlords. We're going to make sure companies that take public money can't turn around and dump a bunch of workers, because that's gross. But liberals and conservatives don't care about that because they don't care about us. Ending legislative poverty for, like I was talking about earlier, we're going to end legislative poverty for disabled people. End legislative poverty for people that are on old age security. In the last government, the NDP got pharmacare, dental care, anti-scabbard legislation. Not the liberals. Those have been NDP ideas, bold ideas that we've been fighting for decades, and because they wanted to stay in power, we got them. Did the liberals screw us around a little bit to get them? Oh yeah, sure, 100%. We all knew they were going to do it, right? But then we forgot how to talk to people to explain that those were our ideas, right? We want to lower prices, better jobs, better paychecks. We need bold ideas. We need leaders that are brave enough to fight for them, and not just say they're going to fight for them, but actually fight for them and fight for the working class of this country. That's what Canadians here deserve. And that's why I'm running to be the next leader of the NDP.
I've been a Liberal staffer. I've worked in Liberal governments, and it's a piece of frustration I have with that side of the spectrum quite a bit. This idea that like incrementalism achieves anything. It doesn't. We know that it doesn't. But also we're in a time of like huge transformation in the economy and society. And it doesn't seem to me that incrementalism would ever keep up anyway. It's also the system that has sort of rewarded the current reality and increased prices. So you had brought up, people saying like, oh, we can't have bold progressive ideas because costs will go up. Well, what is happening right now? Like look around you. That is what is happening right now under the current prescription. So to me, it just seems like that is what's necessary. But I also think politically, I don't think people are afraid of change, but you have to give them a positive roadmap for what's possible. And I think that's something that your policy prescriptions has been doing. It's been saying, hey, this is going to be really big and transformative, but it is possible. And it can bring us into, the next era that we're working in. Something that has come up in the news in the last few days is the NDP leadership candidates and what you're going to do about oil and gas in this country. And to me, I was a big fan of Rachel Notley, really, really liked her. Obviously, she embraced that to a degree. To me, I can recognize like we're not going to stop doing oil right now. That's obviously going to be a transition, but we're not even talking about a transition. Like the liberal prescription is like, let's just build new pipelines where there aren't there aren't companies who want to build it, there aren't clients to purchase it, and there isn't a safe way to transport it, but let's go build the pipeline. And instead of having the conversation of how are we going to bring these workers into the future of the economy, which is, clean energy and things like that, we're not talking about this transition. And to me, failing to talk about transition and failing to talk about tackling the new economy and where it's going in the next 30 to 50 years is a failure to stand with workers, quite frankly. How do you feel about all of these topics? Because I feel like we're just not really getting to the meat of the matter, which is how are we supporting workers, regardless of what job they end up in?
Yeah, no, you're right. It's like the real fight is about fairness for everyone, 100%, right? And a lot of these seasoned politicians love to put false choices in front of people, and that's how we get to policies and politics of fear and division rather than politics of progress. Progress is progress no matter what it looks like. And we fight for the working class, everyone wins. It's simple math, right? We can fight climate change by creating good jobs to build carbon-free energy while using Canadian steel. It's simple. That's climate action, that's economic justice, and worker power all at once. So it can all play together, right? It's not this versus that, because that's what the ruling class wants us to believe it has to be, so that we stay divided. We don't come together as one. The only way that we're going to win is by being who we are. And that's a party by and for working people. We'll never ever win by pretending to be something that we're not, just to get votes.
100%. I've always believed that any political party that tries to be something it's not to win tends to fail. Like people want bold action, but they also want authentic action. They want a party to actually be the values it stands behind. Speaking of that, there's a debate in the NDP constantly about ideological purity versus electoral viability. And, this is the question of, do you want to be, the country's conscience, or do you actually want to get elected and do things? And I don't know that it necessarily has to be a choice between those things. I tend to believe that political parties, when they really lean in on their values, they tend to get rewarded for it. But I'm wondering, are there any sort of core NDP positions, historical positions, that are absolutely red lines for you that you would not toss away to be a little more competitive in an election?
I don't believe in tossing away any of our core values. We're a party, sorry, even I slip up. I hate calling us a party because we're not a party. The NDP is a movement, and yeah, I even slip up. Like, what can I say? I'm not polished. We don't have to give up any of our core values, because our core values are working class people, making life better for people. And do we want to be that decision between the country's conscience or government? We've been the country's conscience for a very long time. And I know we only have 7 seats, and people snicker and chuckle when I say we're going to form government one day, maybe this next election, maybe in the next election. I'm an eternal optimist. But I do know is that once we get back out there, once people have faith that we're back to our core values, that we have the matters of the working class in hand, we can form government. We were that close from it. That close until Jack was stolen from his family and from us, right? We're that close. And we can do it again because people want a government that won't sell their soul to corporations. People want a government that they can have faith in and rely on to make their lives better. And that's what the NDP is. That's what the NDP will be and will continue to be. So no, I won't. That was a long way to say I won't sell any of our stuff down the toilet just to form government because we don't have to. Told you I thought.
So I want to dig a little bit into your plans for workers, because you actually have two plans for workers so far. You have the Good Jobs Promise and you have the Worker Power Plan. And both of these plans together are about returning economic and workplace power to workers, which is something that has been slipping away, for years and years since these were established in the first place. How would you achieve this, and what are the details of these two plans?
So the Good Jobs Promise, quite simply, is we promise a job for everybody that wants a job. We'll put you to work. Like when we look at this whole country, we built this country. Every brick that was laid, or every tree that was planted, well, not every tree, but every tree that was planted by a human, we did it. We built the companies that are here. And if we want to build an economy that works for everyone, we should trust the people who built the economy. That's us. My plan gives power back to the people. Puts workers in charge of workplaces. So we're going to build, like I always go to ships, right? We're going to build ships in this country. If they're going to sail in Canadian waters, you build them in Canada, because we can do it. We're going to use it by using Canadian steel. This new industry that we're going to create and we're going to push, that's going to grow, that's going to give new jobs to tradespeople. That's going to give new jobs to college and university students coming out and going into a trade, or going into whatever PhD or master's or degree they got. We need to look at building tomorrow's energy, right? So why don't we, if we're going to build wind farms, why don't we build the wind turbines here? Why doesn't the Canadian government own a wind turbine? So we have a plan to put people to work, period. And people go, we can't do it, it's too expensive. I'm sorry. It's too expensive, but we don't do it. Right? We're going to be looking at giving the Bank of Canada a dual mandate. Right now, they just have to keep the inflation rates low. Well, who cares if the inflation rates are 1% or 40%, if there's no jobs out there for people? We're suffering anyways. So we're going to dual mandate the Bank of Canada. So yeah, number one, you keep the inflation rates low to keep the pressure off Canadians. But you'll also, part of that, the second mandate to that is jobs for Canadians. And no, the Bank of Canada won't employ everybody. And no, not all the jobs will be public jobs. Obviously, there'll be a mix of public and private jobs, private investment. So the plans that we have and the plans that we're going to be pushing are going to be huge.
So the flip side of the affordability conversation, there's the income and work side of it, but then there's the housing side of it, which is one of the biggest pressures that people face. So you said that the housing crisis is no accident, that it has been structured this way. And I worked at the Ministry of Housing in Ontario 10 years ago. I fully agree. We had policies in the 70s that led to a condo boom in Ontario that didn't make homes that were very great to live in, and that have helped spike the cost of housing in this province. That market is now sort of crashing, which is also leading to knock-on effects and making it harder to get housing built in general. My own block has 9 different towers that are supposed to be going up on it. I live in a 1930s walk up myself. I don't know how many of those projects are actually going to go through now. So we're obviously in a moment where we have to make different decisions about how we've been building housing. The NDP historically has built a lot of social housing in this province, which was really, really important for giving people options and creating a bit of a housing ladder with different options for people in different stages of their lives. What's your plan for making housing more affordable in this country?
Well, first off, just like everything else that I talk about, housing is a class war. The rich get richer while we're in debt for the rest of our lives because the prices are obscene. People are forced to buy homes so that they can have a retirement nest egg when they pack it in. Come on. A home should be a place to live, not your retirement package. That should be provided to you by your employer who you've been slaving away for your lifetime, right? Pensions are deferred wages, and that's what they should be, not your home. But all right, I won't go down that rabbit hole. I'm learning to.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we get into deferred pension, deferred income as pensions, like really, really important issues, and there's conservatives who are like, no, that's like some benefit, and we shouldn't go there because we'll talk forever.
So, like, we need wartime mobilization to build the houses that we need. I mean, we haven't done that since post-war, like WW2. This is what we have to get back to. The federal government has turned housing into an investment asset, like I was saying before, for the wealthy instead of for us to live. Like I got a 21-year-old daughter, Madison. I hope I don't get in trouble for saying her name by her, but she said to me when I started this run, because I asked her, I said, do you want to sign up to support your pops? And she's like, how about you prove to me first that you're going to do something for people my age so we can afford a home to live in?
I will say a pretty good sign you've raised her right, that she didn't just rubber stamp your candidate.
Oh my. Like, then my dad, who was sitting there too, he looks at me, he's like, yeah, son, what are you going to do? I'm happy to say that she signed up the other day. She sent me a little screenshot of it, which like warmed my heart, because today's youth will never be able to afford a home at the way we're going, right? That's why I have to build on a massive scale. The federal government, when we become federal government, we need to build to triple the number of homes we're building in this country. That means, like I said earlier on, public, co-op, and not-for-profit homes, the kind of homes that stay affordable forever, not luxury condos for investors, not buying a lot big enough to split to make two smaller homes and then charge 1.5 million for each home. Right? That's breaking people. That's why people my daughter's age, 21, don't see hope. They see living with their parents till they're 40. Right? We need to support renters by imposing some type of rent control. We have to crack down on corporate landlords, whether it's by empowering tenant unions and banning corporate ownership of affordable apartment buildings, right? Everyone in this country will benefit from fixing the housing crisis. We build tens of thousands of houses. That creates jobs in this country. That creates building trades. That creates jobs for steel workers in the mills. Students coming out of schools, just like the building boats in Canada example, you're going to get more architects to work, more engineers. This is how we mobilize entire industries in this country. We've done it. We did it before. It's proven even. And we're going to do it again.
So I want to talk about young people for a second, because I'm no longer that young myself. I am 39 now, but I'm young at heart and also care about young people in this country and Gen Z and Alpha following them. In my mind, I don't see a lot of opportunity out there for them. I graduated into the Great Recession. I graduated April 2008. By fall 2008, things were not looking great, and people in my generation have never really recovered from that. I'm really concerned for young people now, because they can't even get into the job market at this point, and youth unemployment across the country is sitting around, depending on the province, between 12 and 17%. I think it's going to keep going higher. We're about to see the end of the seasonal boom that happens every year around Christmas, so it's going to start looking pretty bleak in January. And I think people are looking for something new, something different. So that Polera poll I referenced earlier, it also did some research on expanding the NDP voter pool. So according to them, you talked about the 7 seats, all that kind of stuff. 46% of Canadians are still open to voting NDP. This was a blip. It's not necessarily a death knell. And at this point, according to the poll, your candidacy had the biggest likelihood for driving new memberships, and it had the largest potential vote pool of any of the candidates. Why do you think voters are so drawn to your campaign, and are you seeing a bit of interest from young voters, particularly because you are speaking so differently about the issues?
We're bringing something new to the table, right? Like, look at me, for crying out loud. Like, I wear work boots every day. I look like what somebody called me on Reddit, shipyard socialist Santa. Right?
Seasonally appropriate.
Yeah, I'm not going to say no to that handle, right? Like, we're doing things differently. I'm not a career politician. Yeah, I'm a politician in the labor world, which is different than this stuff. Our campaigns being run by the working class for the working class. And yeah, people are incredibly excited about it. To the people I talked to right before the launch of this campaign were university students. I was flipping around on Instagram. I was doing that death scrolling thing. And all of a sudden this message blinged up. I won't say his name because I don't know if I'm allowed to. I don't like dropping names from people if they don't give me permission. It was 11:30 at night, and he goes, "Rob, I live in Ontario. I go to the University of Ottawa. Do you want to meet for coffee the next time you're in town?" I said, "Yeah, sure." Right, so we met for coffee. I said, "I'm here. Let's go tomorrow." So we met tomorrow. We met the next day. He was the first one. The second one I had to meet the next day, but they text late at night. And kids these days, I tell you, I'm kidding. But I got to learn. I got to learn because I'd never went to college or university. It's expensive. And if you can find a job while you're going to school to pay for that, you're lucky. If not, you're paying for stuff with a credit card. So when you graduate, you got to pay your schooling back. You got to pay your credit card debt. Well, by the way, there's not going to be a job for you. Right? So I understand this stuff now. And I understand how hard it is. And so young people are coming to our campaign because they want to see the party go back to its roots. They want to see the party fight for the working class again. They want to see the party fight for the next generation, which what we're doing. Right? Our bold policies, our exciting ideas, this is all renewing the vision for the NDP that works as a bottom-up organization. This is what is attracting people of all ages. Like even me, like I'm like, yeah, let's do this. Like I'm 49, but I feel like I'm in my 20s, right? Which is fantastic. You know, we even heard through grapevines that the Conservatives are even scared about us winning our campaign. Right? And they should be, because for far too long they were saying we're the party of workers. And went, yeah, the guys that try to kill workers, not kill them literally, but that want
projections, yeah.
Yeah. Now they're scared because now there's an actual true blue working class party led by somebody that came out of their ranks is going to call bullshit on them and tell it like it is. You know, and what we're seeing is when people actually hear about our campaign and what we're fighting for, they're inspired because that's been lacking. They may not even known that it was lacking in their lives until they hear us. And that's worker power. And that's what this campaign's bringing back, is worker power.
I want to talk about that a bit. And, you know, I didn't really flag that I was going to ask about this, but this week, something really awful has occurred, which is Trump has put out his security plan, his global security plan for the US. And I mean, it doesn't tell us anything we didn't already know. We obviously know that there is a far-right alliance globally that is focused on, you know, taking down progressive politics and introducing authoritarian politics to as many countries as possible. We know that Stephen Harper plays an important role in this in the organization that he heads. So none of this is surprising, but now that it's officially in print and openly being discussed, it's a little more real and a little scarier. And to me, the solution to that has always been coming up with some kind of progressive populism that can respond to people's real needs. Because, you know, you've made the comparison. We've got a lifelong banker versus a lifelong politician. And when those are the two choices, fundamental, realistic, you know, real world change isn't going to happen, because neither of those two are particularly interested in helping out the working class and helping out struggling families. They're not that's not their priorities. They have, you know, duties that they have to give to other people who have put them in power, and they're just not focused on that. And when that is the case, when you're vacillating between, you know, people who are winking at fascism, which I would say is Polyev, and then people like Carney who are not really doing anything to address the everyday needs of people and aren't even talking about it. When that's the case, people kind of want to burn everything down. And that's where we're really in a dangerous position, where someone can come in and take over the country, or, you know, we can fall victim to things from other countries like the US or Russian disinformation campaigns. We've seen this over the last 10 years. When that's the case, you really do need a strong answer to that to keep people from falling prey to those pressures, you know, internally and externally in the country. I happen to think that the campaign you're running is perfectly timed, but also incredibly crucial, not just within our own boundaries in Canada, but as part of the global solution to this rising authoritarianism. Is that putting too much pressure on your campaign, or do you agree that these are problems that are happening and hopefully you're helping to respond to it?
I don't think it's too much pressure. Like when I got into this race, I knew I was getting into it to try to make the world a better place, like even if it's that much better. You know, like I really got into the NDP when Jack led it because I loved his message. Lead with hope, love, compassion. You can build anything that you want. You can make this country, you can take this country to incredible heights. And that's what we need right now, because exactly everything that you've said, we're going to counter. We're going to counter the hate. We're going to counter the fascists. We're going to counter, you name it, because it's the right thing to do. Right? Like what we're seeing out there right now is we see governments, we see Poilievre's Conservative Party, One BC here in British Columbia, where they tell you the reason why your life is so hard is because your neighbor is causing it. So hate your neighbor. And that's something that we're pushing back against. That's something we're saying is wrong. That's something that we're saying never should ever be spoken like. Because people's lives are in bad shape and are tough. It's because the government and the way they do their business and the policies that the government's put in place. It's not because you're your neighbor. So do I take it as a lot of pressure? No, I don't. I look at it as something that must be done. And I feel I'm the person to do that.
So now that we've gone into the fascism, I want to veer into more fun territory. And, you know, I've been looking at your campaign's feeds, and I've been struck by the eclecticness of your soundtrack. I'm a music nerd, and I'm going to name some names here because it's just, it's wild to me. And it kind of does sum up your campaign's approach to bringing everybody in and not caring where people are from. So you have Queen, you have the Ramones, Florence and the Machine, Bob Dylan, Dolly Parton, Taylor Swift, Radiohead, Bachman Turner Overdrive, Shabuzi, Johnny Cash. Wild mix of music, all of which I appreciate. But I also heard that you're a big classical music fan as well. And, you know, I took music all through school. So I'm really interested in, like, what's your go-to when you're on the trail?
Oh, you name it. I am about as I'm not musically inclined at all. Like I can't sing. I do karaoke sometimes, but the place empties out. Like I listen to everything: classical, opera, heavy metal, Mongolian heavy metal music, and that's awesome because it's mixed with their folk. It's the band's called The Who, HU, sorry. Like right now, for me, it's a song called Sava by Emile Bilodeau. Amazing song. I've started listening to more francophone artists. Or L'Amérique Pleure. You name it. Whatever fits my, like, a little bit of Pink Pony Club.
I was gonna say that seems to be on everybody's playlist this year.
Yeah, that's the go-to song for most people. right now. But it's anything. It's how I feel. If I want to get ramped up, maybe I throw some AC/DC on. If I want to be a little bit more reflective, I put on some Tracy Chapman. If I just want to have a good time, then it could be anything. It could be like one of my favorite songs right now is oh shit, I'm gonna draw a blank now. The Big Man by Dropkick Murphys. Right?
Yes.
Love that song. So if I'm driving down the road and I'm getting a little bit tired or whatever, or something, I got to push something out of my brain, I'll just drop that track on and just crank the tunes, right? It's just depends on what it is, what kind of day it is.
Okay, so I've taken a lot of your time. So as we close up here, the NDP race is going to conclude in March. There's a lot of time left in the race at this point. What can people do to support your campaign and get more involved in it to help you become the next leader?
Go to robashton.ca. Like, I'm 49 years old. I never thought I'd have a website named after me, but I do. robashton.ca. Reach out to us, volunteer for the campaign. Donate if you can. Anything that you can afford that doesn't hurt your life. And tell your friends, because this is a numbers game. One member, one vote in true democratic fashion. And so I need people to sign up. So all those of you think that our message is good, our message is solid, but you're not a party member yet, sign up. Sign up so that you can guide our party into the future.
And when's the deadline to sign up as a member?
Oh yeah, shoot! I guess I should tell that. January 28th is you have to sign up by, and the election is going to be done 2 weeks before the actual convention. It's going to be online, and I think mail it too. And then the winner gets announced on March 29th.
There you go. So that should be exciting. Thanks so much for joining me today, Rob.
Thank you, Teresa. I really appreciated the time that you gave me.
You've been listening to Progress Canada, presented by Lightbulb Narrative, a Canadian-owned company specializing in strategic communications, narrative development, and content creation. Our music today was composed by Elliot Middleton. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing to access future episodes the moment they drop. Thanks for listening.